Anybody who has reviewed Nine Souls will say it's set in a Taoism meets cyberpunk world because that's what the Steam description told them. However, since I doubt anybody actually knows what those words mean, I'll tell you what it really is. Nine Souls is a deflection-based Metroidvania game. Oh wait, the Steam description says that too, doesn't it? Okay, so what can one expect when jumping into a new playthrough of Nine Souls? Well, first, the story is at the forefront here. There are many things you won't be told at first, but there are plot lines advanced with dialogue between characters, not only lore drops found while exploring, though those do exist too. The game opens with Yi living his life in a human village. The introduction alone is a story arc in itself. You'd be right to assume that not everything is as peaceful as it seems. The scene ends with Yi saving the naive child he'd been living with from ritual sacrifice. Why is this happening? Well, Yi may or may not be involved, and he certainly doesn't want to tell you. The character you control and guide through the story is actually guiding you. Yi has his own backstory and ambitions that are not fully revealed until very late in the story. Now, let's get into the most interesting part, the gameplay and combat. The main draw of Nine Souls is the parrying. For most attacks enemies throw at you, you press the parry button right before the attack hits you, negating damage and granting a chi charge. This charge can then be used to explode the enemy, dealing big damage. Standard upgrading systems are present in Nine Souls. We have a skill tree which provides buffs over time, whereas new moves are gained by progressing through the story in normal Metroidvania fashion. Equipable jades provide buffs, often with trade-offs, and a limited number can be equipped. With the basic mechanics laid out, I want to go boss by boss. We'll analyze the incredibly subtle difficulty curve that keeps the game from feeling frustrating, while improving your skills along the way. It's actually magical how it feels so much easier going back to early bosses for footage, because it truly didn't feel like the difficulty was increasing much during my playthrough, but clearly it was. First off is Yingjiao. This boss has mostly easy to parry moves, as well as a couple you need to dodge, which is a great way to teach you how most of the game is going to go. You have to parry everything you can, attack and use talismans when you have an opening. If the boss flashes red, you have to dodge past that attack, at least for now. Getting hit by it will deal a lot of damage, but you can punish with follow-up attacks after a successful dodge. After defeating this boss, Kwafu will join you and become a shopkeeper who upgrades your weapons and gives you the bow. Next, you can go after Gomang or Yanlao. My natural gameplay led me to Yanlao first, which I'm told is unusual. Maybe that's why it felt like one of the more difficult bosses in this game, but eventually it just clicks. This boss, being an early boss, introduces some real difficulty, but also has the most telegraphed attacks to punish out of any of them. This second phase threw me for a loop when I first reached it. Many second phases in this game will immediately use their strongest attack upon starting, so you have to be ready for it and wait it out. Once you get it down, the rest is history. On to the next. You can't tell me Gomang isn't the worst boss in the game. Two strong but not boss level enemies will attack you, and Gomang is vulnerable while she comes down to revive them. This boss is easily cheesable by giving the Thunderburst Bomb item to Kwafu, who will make you a new high damage arrow type, with the catch being the enemy has to stay still to take the full damage. And Gomang stays still. Rare Nine Souls bosses I know. You fight Jie Quan with your newly acquired Unbounded counter ability, which allows you to counter those unparryable attacks, leaving a massive opening to retaliate. Jie Quan has an easy-to-notice opportunity to use this new move, and it's your main opening to attack during both phases. Challenging, but relatively straightforward. One of the toughest fights in the game is Lady Ethereal. Out of all the bosses, her different phases feel the most distinguished from each other. Phase 1 is a joke. Depending on if your glass is half full or empty, you could see it as a waste of time or a valuable warm-up. Phase 2 starts creating a lot of clones to get attacks out faster, and you have to attack each one to find out which is real. Phase 3 adds this really scary looking attack that is easier to deal with than it looks. The tricky part is that you have to dodge the last hit, which is unusual for this game. Lady Ethereal will likely take you the longest to get used to out of any boss besides maybe the final one. G is not too bad. Parrying the projectiles gives you charges to use when you get an opening. Phase 1 takes forever since there aren't a lot of ways to deal massive internal damage. This is rectified in Phase 2, where you start spamming the hell out of this attack that you can just unbounded counter to deal lots of damage. Fushi and Nuwa are a pretty tough boss. The attacks can take a bit of getting used to since you need to figure out when you have to parry in certain directions. A fun thing to do here is maximizing damage output, since there's a surprising amount of room to deal extra damage with unbound encounters and charge slashes. Aigong is the toughest challenge I faced in this playthrough. She has a very high amount of health, and a good amount of attack mix-ups to keep track of. She is so fast in her second phase, so strategically finding opportunities to attack is more important than ever. This is the only boss that took me longer than an hour to get through. But did you think it was over? Well, apparently there's a true ending that gives Aigong a third, even tougher phase, which means you have to beat the entire normal boss to even get an attempt at the new fight. I'm gonna need an entire second video for that, so subscribe to be notified when my 9 Souls 100% video releases. That's all for today's 9 Souls review. I'd give this game a 9 out of 10, since the difficulty curve and bosses were phenomenal, but the traversal through areas between bosses had more than a few imperfections. One of my favorite games I've played recently. Have a good day, everyone.